Breaking news, a key banker for Paul Manafort just had his Manhattan home burglarized in an unusual robbery in the middle of the night. This banker was linked to the loans that Bob Mueller prosecuted in Manafort's recent trial. And the banker, David Fallerino, says that after last night's break-in, the, quote, only items missing from his home are a briefcase, iPad, and sneakers. That's according to a report from NBC journalist Jonathan Dienst, who writes that Fallerino was one of the three key figures not called by Bob Mueller's office to testify at the trial of Paul Manafort. The break-in came on the same evening that news broke that Manafort had begun negotiations with Bob Mueller about a plea deal. Now, this new report of the burglary does not identify any suspects or a motive. Authorities have not said whether they're investigating any potential link between this burglary of Paul Manafort's banker's home and the current legal pressure on Manafort, who is now a convicted felon. And you don't need to be a detective to know there are random burglaries in Manhattan. It's possible to see this as a random unsolved burglary. Take one of the most burglarized areas in Manhattan, the Garment District near Penn Station, which has had 27 different burglaries since the start of 2017, according to city records. Now, that's a place where there are some burglaries to choose from. But how about where Manafort's banker actually lives? It's an expensive neighborhood by Central Park lined with fancy doorman buildings. Are random home burglaries as common there? Maybe instead of 27, there are 20 or 10 or 5? Nope. We checked city records today and found that since January 2017, that block has 0 burglaries, not one. And we confirmed those records with NYPD Assistant Commissioner Devora Kaye tonight, who says, yes, there have been no residential burglaries on that block at all since January 2017. Now, authorities are, again, not saying more about the suspects or motives. There's no reporting that says this is linked to Paul Manafort directly. It could be an unusual event at an unusual time, or it could be unusual for a reason. In a moment, I'm going to speak about the wider Manafort issues to 2 former federal prosecutors. But first, I go right to the reporter on the story, Jonathan Dienst, chief investigative reporter for WNBC. What happened?
Well, the NYPD is investigating. They responded to a call placed by that banker, David Fallerino, that his home had been broken into overnight. And as you said, sometimes a burglary is just a burglary. But what makes it unusual, as you said, who the victim is, where this happened, and what was taken. So again, the NYPD now trying to find out who took this banker's iPad and briefcase, trying to review surveillance video along that block to see if they can identify a suspect. The 911 call came in overnight around 1:30 in the morning. The banker claiming that he had left the door to his penthouse, the balcony door to his penthouse, unlocked, and that somebody had come in leaving and left a crowbar behind, and he woke up when he heard his front door slam. Again, unclear who broke in. Police not telling us what was in the briefcase or what's contained on that iPad.
Well, Jonathan, let me jump in with the final question. Is the fact that something like a briefcase, which is not considered outwardly all that valuable, on a block that never, has had a burglary in the last year and a half, is that significant, do you think?
I guess the only question is what's in the briefcase, and did the person who entered that apartment know what they were looking for, or was it just random, and was the burglar scared off because the victim woke up during the burglary and he may have heard the victim coming out of his bedroom and thus fled out the front door? It's unclear. There's nothing to say that this was any sort of pre-planned incident. This is a 9-floor balcony overlooking the back of the building. It has a terrace. There are adjacent buildings nearby. It is on a block near what's called Billionaires Row, where all these luxury high-rises with views of Central Park, where, as you noted, there are very few break-ins. The only crime that I could find anywhere near that block was the robbery off of a truck parked about a block or 2 away, but that was parked out on the street. So again, the investigation early, ongoing. It's certainly something that's a talker. But as of now, you would think that given the Manafort trial and the conviction that just happened from this bank fraud case, that prosecutors already had a lot of the information they already needed to prove their case, and they did with those convictions.
Jonathan Dienst on the story, thank you very much. I want to bring in Ty Kelly, a former federal prosecutor and DOJ lawyer who worked with before Rod Rosenstein, as well as former federal prosecutor Paul Butler. Paul, what do you make of this one? You heard Jonathan there reporting this in a measured way. We spoke to NYPD. There aren't a lot of 9th-floor crowbar robberies on Billionaires Row. Indeed, there hasn't been any home invasions, as I mentioned, since January 2017. Your reaction?
most likely random or coincidence. Weird stuff happens, except for two things. One, this is Donald Trump and Paul Manafort's New York, where folks have fixers and shady financial deals, and Donald Trump talks like a mafioso wise guy, asking for loyalty pledges and complaining about witnesses who flip. And so in that context, it has to be looked at with more suspicion. And Paul Manafort is already indicted for witness tampering. That's also going to make the prosecutors look at this more than they would look at any just random burglary. So, Ari, what happens is a federal prosecutor, you get your FBI agent to make a call to NYPD. Look, this is your case. You guys handle it, but let me know if anything looks weird. And the difference that makes, burglary has one of the lowest clearance rates. Ari, if I call the NYPD's, my sneakers and iPad were stolen, they're not going to do a whole lot. They're going to pay attention to this case.
So, Ty, speak to that point. Paul, of course, makes a connection that is so important. This is in a case where there has already been charges of that kind of obstructive conduct, of trying to fix the evidence. Now, here, again, the authorities aren't telling us they're investigating it this way. Do you think this is something that the prosecutors would be interested in?
There is no doubt that the prosecutors have already made contact with NYPD to make sure that they know everything about how the call was made, what the first statement by the banker was, what's missing, what was in the briefcase. Undoubtedly, there is going to be some work together there to see if, in fact, this has anything to do with the Manafort case.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.